Consequence Podcast Network.
This episode brought to you by
Nick
B.
Nick B, fun fact. He keeps feeding stray cats. He has 17 cats living in his backyard.
Is that true?
I don't know.
Oh.
Do they live in his backyard? Like you're supposed to go.
Oh, man.
That's a fun fact.
Well, that's a lot of cats. And this is coming from someone who lives with 5 cats.
But they always stay outside.
Yes.
Officer Boo runs a tight ship, I hear.
He's a cat wrangler. This episode also brought to you by Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. So I switched up the Ryan time to be nice. And so Ryan sent me a DoorDash gift card the other day. And it was the coolest
that's
thing.
neat.
I know. Because we've been having some medical stuff happening with my father-in-law, and everything's fine for now, but it's just been a little stressful. And so she just sent me that gift card. And so we got some barbecue last night. It was really nice. So thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Well, thank you, Ryan, for that gift card. I don't at all feel like I was singled out for not a gift card. So,
All
Yeah,
right.
thanks for the other gift card, Ryan.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
What? Hang on a second. This is bullshit. This episode also brought to you by
Matt.
Matt.
Say Matt.
And Matt wants to hit you guys up with some fun facts. So I have an extremely fun fact for you about Sweden, his homeland. Sweden is one of the gay-friendly countries in the world.
Oh, nice.
And if you had to guess, when did they legalize same-sex relationships?
1504.
70s.
1504? Mikey.
I don't think laws existed back then.
Magna Carta did. But, so you think the 70s, Jen? What do you think, Mikey?
I'm going to say the 80s.
Or it never had to be legalized because it was never illegal.
Sadly, that's not true. But it's been legalized since 1944.
Oh.
So
Wow.
that means in the depths of World War II, they were like, this is an easy lift, guys. Let's just make this legal because it should be
Right.
already. I just love that they were like facing down Hitler and they were like, nah, we can make this legal. We have time.
Right.
It's fine.
Way to go, Sweden.
I know, right? It took us like 60 more years to get it done here in the U.S. But you know, whatever, guys. Welcome back to another episode of The Patreonicals.
All right. We're going to keep a tight story today. Okay, everyone?
Okay. Famous last words.
What part of the story do you want to hear first?
The beginning.
Which part has rhinoceri?
Ooh.
Rhinoceri. I'm sorry. That just hit me in a weird way. I fucking loved it.
All right, so Eddie went back to Mammaltopia, and he's
Okay.
gathered the war elephants. They're making it a giant fortress,
War elephants. That's amazing.
right?
Is that like Lord of the Rings war elephant?
Yep, and it's like they're building a big Minas Tirith kind of place, but with like same kind of shit.
Those are some nerd words. I don't know.
The war machine is turning for defense. We cut back to Michael. He gets back to Thunderdome, and he has Tristram's body. He goes up to Isaac and tells him, man, shit got real messed up. Both sides took heavy losses, but I took the body of one of their big generals, Tristram, and bring it here.
I forgot Tristram died. Oh my God.
So Isaac's like, you know what we're going to do with this body, right?
Oh.
Is this going to get bad?
And then Michael's like,
I mean, they're cannibals, Mikey. Like, I fear I know what they're going to do. Yeah.
Michael gave him like a weird look, but he's like, we're going to make it an evil cyborg.
Oh, hell yeah.
Ooh.
Like a Tristram cop, like a RoboCop.
Yeah, like, but mixed with Terminator. It's like more human looking, so it's like a little Terminator. Michael and Isaac decide to build this evil Terminator, and Isaac's like cool with Michael right now, so he's like teaching him some stuff with that.
Is it a Tristanator?
Yeah, it's a Tristanator.
Oh my God,
That's
yes.
really great.
Okay.
He becomes an evil cyborg with like a scratched up face. He's got one red eye, but he's got a lot of skin, but he's has some silver showing in, but he's like mostly human. He's like a 70s.
Yeah, like Terminator. Mikey, we get it.
Yeah, okay.
We've seen
You got it. Okay. You guys know what I'm talking about. And then in the basement, Miggy Mac is talking to Matthew because he's like, Miggy Mac's like him and his koala and the baby Bjorn
The koala Bjorn? Yeah.
are like looking at Matthew, and they're like, we know who this guy is. He was a great hero in the before time.
In the before four.
Yeah. And then Matthew's like, don't torture me. That sucks. And then, but then Kate's owl appears.
Who? Who appeared?
Kate's owl. Hootie.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jen. And his name is Hootie?
Yeah.
What? So wait, what is Hootie doing?
He delivers a message that delivers the location of where Kate's motorcycle is with the sidecar that they snuck into Thunderdome with.
Who does he deliver that message
The
to?
owl was trained to find Matthew because they don't know he's like completely amnesic.
So Hootie the owl was telling him where the getaway car is, more or less.
Yeah. Well, so Miggy Mac, the koala, and Matthew go to the motorcycle, the sidecar, and Matthew's like, look, I'm starting to remember some stuff. Mammaltopia is like way far that way, and they're like a safe place. So like, let's get the fuck out of here.
Okay, so Mickey Mac, the koala, and Matthew leave?
Yes.
Where's Kate?
Kate's in Thunderdome. Yeah. They
Oh, that's right.
actually, Hootie was like, hey, don't worry about Kate and Mr. Bubbles because they're going to fight out for justice, right, Mikey?
Oh, that's right.
Well, Matthew, they can't. The owl can't communicate with Matthew. He can only communicate with Eddie.
And he can only
Oh.
communicate in Hootie's song lyrics.
Right, exactly.
So he was
Yeah.
like, while he was directing them to the motorcycle with sidecar, he was like, hold my hand. And they
Except
were
he
like,
doesn't
what?
even have
hold my hand. I love this. Hootie can only speak in Hootie the Blowfish song lyrics. This is now canon.
We cut to the Thunderdome. Mr.
Okay.
Bubbles is staring down Kate with the shotgun. Kate was like, look, Mr. Bubbles, we can't fight each other.
I got telepathy, so fuck
Right.
you.
Well, yeah. Then she does that. Well, Mr. Bubbles cocks the shotgun. He's like, "Ch-ch-ch." He's going for it.
Oh, no.
So she uses her telekinesis, steals the shotgun, and she's like, well, if I got to do this, she shoots him in the foot.
Oh,
But when she shoots him, it turns out that Mr. Bubbles was a cyborg the whole time.
what? So he was a plant?
He was a plant.
From Thunderdome again?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
So she tears Mr. Bubbles apart.
Circuits and all.
Circuits and all. And then like they won't let her out because they saw her like rip everything apart in their mind. So she's caged into the actual Thunderdome now.
As you see in the background of that Thunderdome situation, Hootie is like guiding the other, Mickey Mac and the koala and Matthew to the to the bike, and then they see him and they're like, "Should we go help?" And he goes, "Let her cry."
But then it cuts back to Eddie, who's like building all this stuff, and Hootie appears. He went ahead and he's like, he tells Eddie
Who?
that Mickey Mac has turned to the good side because of the koala. And he's bringing
Right.
Matthew back. And Eddie seems really self-pleased about it. And he has a plan. But we'll find out about all that next week.
You're setting me up for next week where Hootie shows up to Kate and sings, "I only want to be with you."
Yeah.
Oh.
But everybody can't understand Hootie, so they just look at him confused.
They're like, who are
like-
you?
Yeah, like when we're seeing things from a Hootie's perspective in this, we hear him singing it perfectly, but everyone else around him is like, what is happening? I can't
Who is
understand.
this owl?
Oh my God. Will Mickey Mac get away with Matthew?
Well, Kate pieced together her robot friend. How many lyrics does Todd know to Hootie and the Blowfish?
Find out next week on another episode of The Patreonicals. Yeah, so now it's time to thank our You Can Get It level sponsors because they can
Yes.
truly get it.
They get it time and time again.
Ooh,
Todd.
just month after month they're getting it.
Even during
I
quarantine.
know, man. You can get it during quarantine.
Well, Mikey, you maybe not so much.
Yeah, I know. If you don't use it, do you lose it?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. Let's give it to those who can get it.
All right. So first we have Ash.
Yeah.
Hey, Ash.
Hey, Ash.
Yeah. Ash is getting it.
What?
You're going to
Okay.
get it.
And next up we have Karoon, and Karoon can get it as well.
Karoon can always get
Yeah,
it.
he's getting it.
Yeah. And we also have I guess by default they're getting it. Kayla and Aaron.
Oh, yeah. They
can
also
get
have
it.
regular access to it, Mikey.
Kayla and Aaron,
I mean, we're
they
assuming.
got it.
They locked it down. They got it once and they were like, this is so good, I'm putting a ring on it.
After one time,
Aw.
that's so soon.
Mikey, some people aren't afraid of commitment.
I know.
And next we have Scott.
Ooh.
So Scott is getting it also.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Scott, you truly can get
Scott
it.
You
got
can
it.
get it.
Yeah.
Also, we have a new person who has shown that they can get it as well.
Oh, a new-
person has gotten
They will
it.
be getting
Yeah.
it.
Sean.
Mikey, that sounded like a threat. And they will be getting
Sean,
it.
I will find you and you will get it.
Oh, God. Yeah, Sean, you can get it. Thank you so much for joining the You Can Get It level. We appreciate the continued support.
And our last person who can get it, who has been getting it for so long.
I know who this one is. This one's Veronica.
Veronica.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, Veronica. Veronica been getting it.
Oh, yeah. She actually got married during the run of our podcast. So
She did, yeah.
We know she's married and she has regular access to it as well, Mikey.
She got it from us for a while, and then we handed her off to someone.
She has begotten
We walked her down the aisle.
I know.
Well, guys, thank you so much for continuing to support us and our
Yeah.
weird little fun podcast. We really, really appreciate it. But this episode's also finally brought to you by
Chris. Hey, Chris. Chris wants everyone to know that you are seen and you are loved and you're not alone.
Guys, do not go outside. There's theme music out there, and it will kill you if you go outside. Trust
Todd,
me.
it only got on me a little bit, okay?
Don't let her in, Mikey. Don't let her in.
So we're in quarantine now. As most of you know, sometimes we have to cut our own hair.
Oh, no.
Corey asked me if I could do the little box thing with the razor on the bottom, you know, like on guys' hair. Yeah, I did a stripe right up the back of his head.
What?
And he ended up having to almost shave his head.
Oh, no.
Welcome to the Horror Virgin, everyone.
Oh, my God.
I'm Jen.
I'm Mikey.
And I'm your horror virgin, Todd, which means I don't like scary movies, but you guys make me watch them. And this week, you guys made me watch 10 Cloverfield Lane. And by you guys, I mean the listeners, because you guys voted on this movie for our, what was it? Claustrophobic horror?
Claustrophobic horror, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is your fault,
Yes, it
guys. Yeah, we were trying to kind of get across like we're all kind of in quarantine and trapped. And I wasn't thinking about how perfect this movie is for right now.
Oh, yeah.
Until I started watching it. And I was like, oh, lots of parallels.
I didn't know that, but there
sure.
are lots of parallels. Yeah, it was really, really interesting. So, Mikey and Jen, have you guys seen this movie before?
I rented it, I think pretty soon after it came out. Yeah, because I definitely had seen it before.
Was this one of your blockbuster nights?
It may have been a blockbuster night, yeah.
Blockbuster nights?
No, this is post-blockbuster.
It may have been a red box.
Okay, fair enough.
But it was before streaming.
Right. So what did you think about when you first saw it, Jen?
I loved it. I think I liked it a lot better this time just because I saw a lot more in it. But I mean, I loved it the first time. For what it is, and we'll talk about how it connects to Cloverfield, but like for what I think it's great. And I love how contained the story is, you know, and
absolutely.
That you think it's going to be about one thing, but it's really about something else. And then it's I think it's really well done.
Yeah. When did you first see it, Mikey?
I saw it in theaters like maybe opening weekend.
So you saw it early 2016. What did you think about it when you saw it?
I loved it. I think it's like a great suspense film.
Yeah.
And I thought John Goodman, I think he deserved like an Oscar for this role.
I'll say
Like,
this. John Goodman is the best male actor in horror. I will say that right now. After seeing this movie and after seeing Arachnophobia, that motherfucker has horror range.
I would say this is one of the best villain portrayals on film in the last decade.
Oh, man. This and Michael Keaton in that Spider-Man movie he was in.
Yeah. I mean, there's
So
not a lot of
good.
good villains anymore.
Yeah.
I love the movie when you're trying to figure out, okay, is there really a disaster, one, or is this guy completely just a serial killer, bad person?
Yes.
And that goes back and forth throughout the film. And you're like, I just remember being in the theater, like trying to figure it out the whole way, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I really thought it was very, very good. It was the first time I saw it last night, and I watched it with Natalie last night in bed, like we watched all the past movies. I thought it was really good. It wasn't super, super scary. It was just like a thriller, and I like thrillers a lot.
I thought it was pretty scary. When John Goodman at that acid vat scene, that's like the most terrifying thing I've ever seen.
Fuck, yes. To say that I like this movie and it felt more like a thriller to me than a horror, it still scared me. There were moments that scared me, and that was definitely one.
There's just no jump scares.
No, I don't know, man. There were when he's like, I accept your apology, and then he immediately shows you that he doesn't accept apologies correctly. Like that really scared me. I was like, what the fuck?
Jen and I talked before we watched this. We didn't know you would like the ending to this movie or not.
Well, let's just get into the fucking movie,
Yeah.
and then we'll talk about it when we get there. Because
Okay.
I feel like there's a lot of shit we're gonna have to unpack in this movie, and I want to start unpacking
There is.
it. Yeah.
I almost thought that it was more scary the second time I watched it, just because I think I saw so much in it. Because what I think this movie is really about is about domestic abuse,
Yes.
and being trapped in a domestic abuse. And so, like the first time I saw it, and we can talk more about this as we go through it. But like the first time, and this was a couple of years ago, I kept thinking, is John Goodman a bad guy? Is he a good guy? What's going on? And I kept, like what you were saying, going back and forth in my head. And now that I've just been going through so much therapy, like the first time I saw him, I was like, oh no, he's a bad guy. Don't
I
trust
knew
him.
very early on, like especially if you were like on the line at the spaghetti dinner scene, you know he's a bad guy. He may not be like a rapist murderer, he kind of builds up to being a possible of that, but he is definitely a bad guy. You just don't know how bad.
Yeah.
You know he's evil throughout the whole film.
Yes.
You just don't know how evil.
Yeah, you're wondering to what degree. But let's get into this fucking movie.
Okay, so we start with someone looking out the window into a city, and we're going to find out that this is Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
I have a huge crush on her.
Yeah, I think she does amazing in this movie.
And that's the thing. Like we were talking about John Goodman, but I mean everybody in this movie is amazing.
Yes.
Like John Gallagher Jr. and they both and I don't think a movie like this would work if you had a weak link with an actor.
No, because there's only 3 people in it. I mean, I realize that there's the occasional other person, but there's only 3 people in this.
I think John Goodman stands out because he's so famous.
Yes.
And this performance transcends his like stereotypical roles.
Yeah. It is
where, like,
so
he
out of the
is
box for him.
Super believable as like a
Yes.
really bad guy. And
yes.
overcoming that like good dad, good guy he usually plays kind of thing.
Yeah, but this reminded me of Green Room on some level because Jean-Luc Picard is evil as fuck in that movie. And you're so used to seeing him as like this leader, an awesome person. And he's like this horrible Nazi now. Like, so it's very, it was sort of like that for me, Jen.
In the opening, when you see John Goodman's truck, the whole rest of the movie, I'm like, did he wreck her car on purpose or did she accidentally get in the wreck?
I actually wrote that in my notes. I was like, oh, John Goodman wrecked her car.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But I think like this scene is significant. And I've read an article about this that kind of unpacked what the point of this scene at the beginning is that I'm going to post in the show notes because I think it fits into her narrative of this abusive relationship.
Oh, she's in an abusive relationship with Bradley
She
Cooper.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you spoiled one of my fun facts, but
Oh, shit. Sorry. I mean, I'm assuming it was Bradley Cooper because it sounded just like him. Was it Bradley Cooper?
it was Bradley Cooper.
Oh,
yeah.
shit. Well, then this movie's super unrealistic because she would never leave Bradley Cooper. That man is a sweater saint.
And what I love about it, and this kind of ties into the ending, is that this is about Michelle. It's not about her relationship with John Goodman's character. It's about her relationship with herself. And so, like, because we established that she is running away from something.
Yeah.
Yes, she's running away from that relationship or
Absolutely.
whatever that's
From
going
Ben.
on there.
His name is Ben, but it's Bradley
Yeah.
Cooper. Yeah. But in this first scene that I sort of didn't like because it was all, music, we find out that she is a clothing designer. I don't know. I thought one of the most interesting things is that she had to open her nightstand with a screwdriver. But we see her running away from this relationship.
Yeah. And she grabs a bottle of whiskey, I think.
Yeah. And she leaves her wedding ring on the table.
She does. Yeah. Or engagement ring. Yeah. So now she's driving through country roads.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to hear some news about everything
We
being
are.
fucked up.
Really, the first dialogue in this movie is the news. And then we get a phone call from Bradley Cooper.
She actually doesn't speak until like 10 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
Which I also think might be part of the arc of her character. But so she is driving and we're starting to hear like there are just power outages and nobody really knows exactly what's going on. And then she pulls up to a gas station and she notices that everything is deserted except for like a big truck pulls up and she just really sees the headlights.
I honestly just thought that she was like in a country gas station because that's like a normal thing that it wouldn't be packed or anything. And honestly, if the apocalypse was happening or whatever is happening, you would think a lot of people would be on the road. A lot of people would be like trying to fill up their tanks and get out of there. So like, I just thought that was a normal night.
It's one of those things that I feel like you could easily justify as normal, but might strike you as off.
Depending on where you are. And the movie does not do a good job, nor do I think it needs to do a good job of showing you where she is, whether she's in the rural area or in the city. I don't think it matters at all. But, that depends on where she was,
But you and I are going to perceive that differently because I know for a fact that like a single woman going to a gas station with a creepy truck is going to feel way differently if I pulled up to a gas station with a creepy truck.
We're talking about two different things because you're right about that, Mikey, and I would agree to that 100%. I just think that, to me, it's not weird if there's only one other car at a gas station in a rural area.
Yeah. I never worry about it.
But I could definitely see as a woman by herself who's just leaving an abusive relationship on some level, she would be like, oh, God, is that person also going to hurt me?
Exactly. Yeah. That's when you do the little keys thing.
Yeah.
You put the keys through your fingers. Yeah.
That's sort of not a throwaway scene, but nothing really happens there. Like, she just gets in her car and she leaves.
Yeah, except to establish the headlights of the truck.
Because that's when John Goodman first sees her.
But so now she's driving and Ben, aka Bradley Cooper, calls and he just wants to talk. And this is when we find out her name is Michelle. And he wants her to come back. And he's saying that they just had an argument and she's not responding at all. And then eventually hangs up. Which I think kind of will feed into what she says earlier or later on about like running away from things when she gets afraid or when she encounters like abusive patterns that she's seen before,
Yeah, but I mean, I think she's handling it correctly. If you're in an abusive relationship, maybe leave. Although we don't really see the level of abusiveness, so it
Right.
may have just been like an argument, right?
It could be. And because she's talking about how her father was abusive too. And so if that's your frame of reference, like
Sure.
an argument, even if it's just an argument that's like would be seen as normal in any other couple, could be triggering and you could perceive it as threatening because that's how PTSD works. You know?
Well, yeah, and because the container that you were born into, if it was your father,
Exactly.
you know that an argument like that can quickly go violent or quickly go whatever
Right.
next level is that triggers that PTSD for her.
Yeah, even if it's not, but we don't
Right.
know. And it could be that he is abusive and that's why, and she's
Absolutely.
running.
But it's Bradley Cooper, so I had to assume he wasn't.
Yeah.
No, I
yeah.
more put it like she's running from the problems.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it's meant to show.
But
yeah.
as if Bradley Cooper couldn't fuck up enough, he calls her back. And when she looks down to see Ben on her phone, that's when she gets in an accident. So, like, that's 100% Bradley Cooper's fault. So, not only did he drive the love of his life out of his life, he also caused her accident. I was like, good job, Bradley. You just killed your girlfriend.
With a little help from John Goodman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't blame the person who calls you when you answer the phone when you're driving.
You know what, Mikey? Fine. Take the high road. Take the high road,
Like,
Mikey.
The police aren't going to show up my door and be like, that girl you texted last week died when you texted her because she was driving.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh, thank God. I don't have to ghost another one.
It's not the guy who drove her off the road by slamming into her car.
Right,
right.
It's Bradley Cooper for choosing that moment to call.
Although we
Right.
don't actually see how the accident happened at this point, it
We
gave
don't.
me the impression that she was like sideswiped, if that makes sense. Although
Yeah.
we do find out
too.
later she was not. But the way she like spun down and like all that stuff, I just thought that she got sideswiped.
Yeah. And I love how they do the title cards here too, because it like cuts to Bad Robot title card and then
Yeah.
her car spinning and then something else title card, probably J.J. Abrams' name or something, and then more spinning. And then she lands like upside down spinning around.
Yes.
And then it's 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah,
that's all
and
we
it's
get.
very quick. This is like the good version of credits right here.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so too.
Right, and you could barely hear the title song, which was "You Spin Me Right Round, Baby, Right Round."
Oh yeah, like a record player.
So, and the next scene, I was like, oh, good. She made it to the hospital.
Right. Yeah.
And then I immediately was like, oh, never mind. She's in a murder dungeon.
Yeah.
At first, you only see like the IV, and I was like, oh, IV denotes like hospital on some level. And then as it zooms out or the next shot, you're like, oh, hospitals don't have cinder block walls. She's in a murder dungeon.
Right. And what you see, it pans out on the walls to have like all of these posters of Misery, the movie, and like Annie Wilkes. And it's very much that kind of movie.
It is, yeah.
As we were talking about the car crash, I was like, fuck, this has a lot in common with Misery.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it does.
And if we could make Misery funny, we can make this
Oh,
funny.
it'll be easy. And then she wakes up and her leg is chained to like a pipe.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yes. She's got an IV in her arm. She's got wounds on her head. She's in a cinder block room with no windows and she's chained very close to the pipe. And she sees her backpack from across the room with her phone on top of it, but she can't reach it.
Right. It's way too far away. Yeah.
We also noticed the power surging just a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And then she like rips her IV out, but then uses the IV pole. I know, it grossed me out too, Jen.
She panics, obviously, but this is John Goodman's first evil act. Like, you totally should write a note in this situation.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's part of the controlling.
Absolutely. She grabs the IV pole and does eventually get her phone over to her, but there's no service because I'm sure she doesn't know this, but she's like way underground right now, right?
Right,
So
yeah,
like
yeah.
no service down there, which makes sense based upon where they are.
Right. And then she starts to hear somebody coming down the steps. And I love how this is introduced because we know she's in this sinister situation. We hear banging and we
Yeah.
see feet. And then we see a tray of food. And then
And we see a gun.
we see a gun on his hip. That's right.
Easily the most scary thing right there. Yeah, I mean, we don't know it's John Goodman yet. We just know it's some big dude with a tray of food and a gun.
Hey, who has chained her to a wall?
Yeah, exactly. And then all he does is like put the food down and say, you need fluids, you need to eat.
Oh, and we hear his voice, and then we see it's John Goodman. We're like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, it's John Goodman. What?
No, I was not okay as John Goodman. I was like, this person's a bad dude.
You can
Yeah.
tell immediately by his mannerisms and looks and like everything that he is not a good dude.
No.
Right.
He does such a great job of conveying that non-verbally. And it's just so creepy.
Honestly, even if you, for medical purposes, had to chain their leg to the bed because you were afraid if they got up, they'd hurt themselves, not knowing they hurt themselves, immediately when you get in and see that she's awake, you act like Tucker or Dale, and you're like, oh my God, so let me tell you everything that happened. This is what happened. You were in a wreck. I saved you. I
Right.
brought you here, gave you fluids, chained you up so you wouldn't hurt yourself. Here's the key to unchain yourself. I'm so sorry. Please eat. I'll leave you alone. I'll come back in in like an hour from now and we can talk about how we get out of this, right? Like he doesn't do any of that shit. He doesn't treat her with respect at all.
Oh, no. And I would have been like, now that you're up, let me like untie your leg and stuff. I was like, I know this is super scary.
Yeah.
And you're never going to believe this. So I'm going to have to like convince you.
Yeah.
Major shit happens outside. I found your body. Let me undo your leg. Come out here. Lay on the couch.
Let's talk. But because he doesn't do all that, when he brings the crutches in and unlocks her and he lets her unlock her leg, she like creates a murder crutch and is like about to kill him with it. Well, and then she starts a fire.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because he's giving her enough to like make her feel like the bad person too, you know, because she's trying to escape.
But I completely understand why you'd want to escape in that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever have friends or like family who like?
Are you just asking us right now if we have friends? Yeah, Mikey. We
No.
have friends.
Like, who like vaguely lie to you about stuff?
Yes.
That's like so infuriating. What are you doing today? I have plans. And you're like, yeah.
Mikey, is this just you complaining because no one wants to hang out with you?
Oh.
No. People want to hang out with me, brother. I'm just saying, John. She's like, what are you doing to me? And he's like, keeping you alive. I'd be like, what does that mean?
I know.
Be specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's withholding that information
Yeah.
because having that information will give her power in that situation.
And he's very much of the impression that she should be thankful, but he has given her no reason to be thankful. Like,
Exactly.
I do think if you go in there like Tucker or Dale and like fumble over your words and you're explaining everything,
Mikey style.
yeah, if you go in there
Right.
Mikey style, she'd be like, oh my God, thank you. She would not have set the fire. She would not have carved a murder crutch, any of that shit. What happens immediately next is 100% John Goodman's fault.
It is, but this is part of that cycle of emotional
Oh,
abuse. Is he's presenting himself as well, because he's a fucking narcissist too.
Oh, yeah,
and so
he's
he's
horrible.
presenting himself as the savior in the situation, and he's automatically mad at her
In a situation he caused.
Exactly. Yeah. But he was doing it for her own good because
Right.
obviously what he thinks is what everyone should think. Yeah, this movie really pissed me off
But
at times.
honestly, and I'll say this about this movie, it keeps you guessing on whether he actually saved her life or not, which it
does,
turns
and
out
that's-
he did.
Yes and no.
Right, exactly, Jen. But it is,
Yeah.
it is a yes and no situation.
It is, yeah, which I think goes partly into his manipulation.
Absolutely.
But we see it immediately because, yeah, he doesn't even tell her his name yet. He just says, I'm keeping you alive. And he does give her the key, but he still keeps her locked in that room.
Is that room locked?
I think it is.
I didn't think that room was necessarily locked.
That room that she's in has that big gray door that he can lock.
Oh, I didn't realize that he could lock it. Either way, she doesn't leave. But I understand, like, I wouldn't leave in that situation either. I would have lit the fucking place on fire like it was haunted and then carved a murder crutch.
Right.
I would have done exactly what she did.
But so she like puts a fire in this little vent at the top of her room.
Yes.
And her plan is to stand hidden away. And then when he runs in, she's going to stab him. And so it happens, except motherfucker, that guy has a fucking syringe and she stabs him and she misses, I guess.
Yeah, honestly, for a big dude, he's got quick reflexes because
He does, man.
dodges and like blocks the murder crutch. And then because of her momentum, she like sort of falls into him. And then he stabs her with that syringe and knocks her out again.
And so then he wakes up, and I guess he's real because now she's chained. I don't think she's chained.
She's not chained up, but he has all the power because he has a gun. So like
Yep, he
that
does.
doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. But it matters because he is allowing her to think she has just a little bit more freedom
Sure,
that
but
she
she
should now
doesn't.
thank him for.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that is not a realistic thing though because he
It's
has a
not,
fucking
but
gun.
it's part of the mind games that this
Oh,
emotional
I completely
abuse
agree.
is. Yeah.
He's a horrible dude. Yeah.
And one of the things that I love about this, and we'll probably get to a point where we talk about this more specifically, but there's really only one time when he actually puts his hands on her in a physical way. And so what I love is this shows that like emotional abuse is still really effective and fucked up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So now he's sitting there and he's actually talking to her. And he's giving her this guilt trip and saying that she's lucky to be there and his generosity only extends so far, which fuck you. I'm probably going to say fuck you to John Goodman quite a bit in this because he really
That's fine. He deserves it.
He's not the good guy.
Yeah, he's not a good dude. And honestly, okay, so in this part, this is where he says there's been like a chemical or nuclear attack. And then he says you were in a wreck. And I literally wrote in my notes when I was watching this, John Goodman called this wreck, I bet you $1,000. And but I did think that he abducted her to avoid paying the insurance deductible. But still, I was a little bit wrong on the motive, right? Yeah, a little wrong on the motive, but still right about the wreck. And this is when he also introduces that we'll be trapped here for a year or two, which would be the scariest fucking thing ever.
And I love, like, you can tell that she has been in abusive relationships before because she immediately knows how to start working him. You know, she's like, "Oh, thank you so much. I think I should go to a hospital now, right?"
She does the same thing with JGJ later on, or John Gallagher Jr. Yeah, and that really pisses him off. But we'll get there. Yeah, she's just really good at reading people. people, though.
If you've been in prolonged abusive relationships, you have to get really good at reading people.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Because at
Because
any
that's how you
moment, they could
survive.
lose their shit and hit you or yell
Exactly.
at you or whatever that is. Yeah. You're always walking on eggshells, and you're really good at seeing when an eggshell's about to break. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then she's hypersensitive to emotional changes in the room
Absolutely.
and things like that. Like all of those are things are like normal things that happen after coming into like a abusive family or abusive relationship sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you're like hyper vigilant and like really sensitive to emotional changes in people around you.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So he's saying there's nowhere to go, and they're in a bunker underneath his farmhouse, and he's talking through what happened in the accident.
Yeah, and at this point, he says shit like it was a chemical attack or a nuclear attack or maybe the Martians attacked us. They figured out whatever. And I was like, does John Goodman believe in fucking aliens? This is so dumb.
He sounds insane.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. But thinking that made me feel like a jackass. At the end of this movie, it actually is aliens, I guess, and I haven't seen the first Cloverfield. So I guess everyone knew that going in, but I had no idea that aliens were involved at all.
That's funny because okay, so what Cloverfield is a found footage movie about a giant like Godzilla-like creature that attacks
Oh, it's
New
not
York
like the
City.
small ones like that she runs into with. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it is interesting and I've got fun facts about that. But
Okay.
yeah.
That's so awesome that you came into this not knowing what Cloverfield is. I think that's a better way to watch
Dude,
this
the
movie.
last
I
15
know.
minutes of this blew my fucking mind. I was like, wait, what? There were aliens in this movie? I had no idea.
God,
Because you guys
that's
didn't tell me
That's so
anything.
I can't
You're
believe you didn't
welcome.
see Cloverfield when it came. It was like a phenomenon when it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
good.
I haven't seen any horror movies, Mikey.
I think Cloverfield is maybe a little closer to a horror movie than this one.
I mean, I agree, but it was
'Cause it is found
marketed like a
footage.
Godzilla. It was marketed like a Godzilla movie.
Right.
Yeah, but it was
Well,
found
it's-
footage. There's no way I was doing that. But that's like the premise of this and a Spotify podcast, Mikey. Guys, go check out Scaredy Cat's YouTube.
Yeah. So she wants to call her family, and then we hear some banging outside,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
we go out and hear him yelling and banging.
He's yelling at John Gallagher Jr., although we
Yeah,
don't
it's-
know that it's John Gallagher Jr. yet. But it does introduce a third person in this bunker, but we have no
It
idea who it
does.
is. Yeah.
A third wheel, if you will.
Aw. But it also establishes the stakes of what happens when you make a mistake.
Yeah,
You're
because
gonna
he
get
is like
yelled at.
yelling and probably pushing him around. And when we meet John Gallagher Jr., he has a broken arm. You
He
don't
does.
know how he broke his arm or it's
Exactly.
sprained or whatever. I don't think they ever address it, but it is a sign of abuse.
They do. He broke it breaking into the bunker.
Ah, that's right. Okay.
But
He might have fallen down the stairs, Mikey. right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. No,
John
I mean,
Goodman
yeah.
told us that. And like,
Yes.
what was John Goodman doing to try to get him out of the bunker, you know?
Right.
What I love is that this is told from her perspective almost
Oh, yeah.
completely,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So it really, you can get into her head, you know? But so she's hearing some music.
Yeah,
and
this is when they reveal the bunker. And it's a pretty legit bunker. Like, it's big. They've got a living room. They've got a little kitchen. He's got his own room. He, being John Goodman, has his own room. I
Yeah.
don't think they ever really address where John Gallagher Jr. sleeps, although
He sleeps in the pantry, right outside her room.
Okay, and so that tells me, because John Goodman, there's a perfectly good room that he could have slept in, and that tells me that John Goodman was planning to try to get somebody to stay in that room.
Yeah, because he wasn't planning on John Gallagher Jr. being there.
Exactly. But
Yeah,
also,
well-
when John Gallagher Jr. was there, he didn't let him sleep in that room.
Exactly. They couldn't share that room.
Exactly.
That's weird.
Yeah, yeah. But that tells me like it was premeditated.
Oh,
And
he was on the prowl. He was looking
Right.
for someone. Yeah.
I mean, I think he's done this to a few different women.
At least one other that we know of. The movie tells us about one other one. The bunker reminds me a little bit of V's Lair and V for Vendetta. Like, it's got a jukebox. He's got old movies. It's like big enough for two people at least. You know, it's a decent sized bunker.
right, and it's like nice. He's made it nice enough to make him seem like a good guy to people he traps down in there too.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't make
Right.
them stay in that cinder block dungeon. You know.
And the only bathroom is in John Goodman's room, and it's in the shower with like a shower curtain that'll come into play later. But he's like, first off, no touching is a rule. And then he makes her go to the bathroom when he wants her to go to the bathroom, which I thought was really weird. I mean, I understand being protective of your space. There are people
Yeah.
who are just that way. But I mean, like, what's going to change if she's like, well, I don't have to go. Can I go in like an hour or two? It is weird that he wants to stand there while she goes to the bathroom. I understand wanting to protect your space, but that's still weird. But controlling when she can go to the bathroom is insane to me.
I would want to put my poop in the acid vat and watch it dissolve.
You can't do that, Mikey, because of the splashback.
Mikey, you would 1,000% fall into that vat of acid if you tried to poop in it.
No. You have to poop in a different thing and then pour it into the acid for disposal reasons.
This is ooh. Then
But
you
Mikey,
can't use
they
that
have-
acid again.
But Mikey, they have indoor plumbing. Why you don't need that?
This is why we're not quarantining with Mikey.
Exactly.
If you have acid that dissolves everything, eventually you're gonna shit in it.
You say it like it's an eventuality. It's not. Like that is an insane statement.
Yeah,
Why
your
would you
premise
ever
is
do
flawed.
That? Yeah. I understand that you believe that you eventually would do that, but that is not reality.
Right. It's like when we were talking about The Shining. Like, I think I could probably go all winter without putting a gorilla suit on if I were in The Shining.
Not
if
me,
you're
bro.
not if you're a hardcore furry like Mikey, baby.
No, I just like dressing up.
But this scene is so interesting because, like, kind of what Todd was saying, like, especially like he doesn't know these people. Like, I could understand him being distrustful. So it's just enough to allow yourself to think maybe you're the crazy one. You know?
But I still think it shows that John Goodman's crazy because he
I think so too.
is controlling when at least she goes to the bathroom. We never see if he does this to John Gallagher Jr., and he might. But he is controlling when she can go to the bathroom.
I think the part that really got me on down the road to hating him was when she's about to fall over, and you look at Emmett, and like immediately he like looks down and looks like so ashamed of himself, you know. And I was like, oh, he's already got him
Because
you know?
John Goodman's carrying a gun. No one has agency in this. The whole time they're trapped by the locks on the door, but they're also trapped by that gun. Like there's nothing they can do.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when you're in that position, it might look like you're going along or you're like falling for things, but like what's your alternative, you know?
You don't have one. That's what I mean. Yeah.
And you just start to internalize that because like later on he's going to put the gun down at some point and you're still going to have all of those feelings like you're doing the wrong thing by trying to push, you know?
That's exactly what happens to like kidnap victims who were kidnapped for a long, long time. And they get to a point where they will go out in public with the person who kidnapped them and they will not ask for help. And that's like not their fault. They're so broken down mentally and tortured mentally that they just don't do that. It's so sad, but it's not their fault.
Right.
It's learned helplessness.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
what the term is called. And it's very, very real.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to get through.
And that's why it's so important. Like if you're, and I say this as somebody who has been in, like who has PTSD from all of this, because I've had some relationships like this.
Yeah.
But like, that's why it's so important not to like blame people for not leaving and not call them weak and not like try to like say, well, why didn't you leave? That's almost like saying, well, what were you wearing? You can't understand what it's like until you're there, you know?
A lot of people do say shit like that. Ugh, it's real sad.
I struggle with that because of that last situation I was in, because I think part of that why she didn't leave was like learned helplessness.
Yeah.
I mean, if it is an actual abusive relationship, that is probably why, you know?
Right.
It is.
And it definitely is. And I was like, come, this is good. Come be with me. You've been like, it just wouldn't happen. And it was so frustrating.
I mean, it's not her fault though. It's like what she knows. I don't know. We don't have to get into all of it, but like it's so.
Well, I know. It's hard because it's like I still have empathy for her, but
Yeah.
also I have to make healthy choices for me. And that's a real struggle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Because I
Yeah.
empathize with her because I think she is in like an emotionally manipulative,
Wrecked
abusive
state,
situation.
yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's hard for me to like give up on people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's when it's just like the support that people really need is just knowing you'll be there for them regardless of what choice they make, you know? And if you, but I mean, I guess the line for that is if you feel like they are in physical danger, you know? It's just hard to know. It's also hard to like, you don't want to decide for somebody else what their next step should be, you know?
Right.
I don't know.
I struggled with all that in that situation. I mean, it was just hard.
Can you tell an adult what they should be doing with their life? And if they, I mean, it's such a weird line, you know?
You can tell them what you think they should be doing,
Sure,
but I mean,
it's-
ultimately,
it's on them to take those steps, right? Like,
Right.
But it's a very, very difficult line.
I mean, it's hard in a physically abusive, your life is in danger situations.
Right.
And it's got to be doubly hard in emotionally abusive situations
Yeah.
because there's that element of control and there's no life-threatening stuff.
Exactly. And so the thing about emotional relationships, and this is like, so I grew up in an emotionally abusive relationship, and I just want to say my dad never actually hit me or anything like that. But like, I saw so much of his behavior in this movie. And the thing that I've had so many problems in therapy with is convincing myself that it actually was abusive. You know, with my first husband, who was abusive emotionally and physically, I would say, well, if he never punched me in the face, it's not abusive, you know? And so like you draw these lines for yourself. And if those lines aren't ever crossed, then you convince yourself that everything's fine and that you're the one who's wrong for thinking that, you know? And so when it's all emotional abuse, it's so easy to tell yourself, oh, I'm just being too sensitive, you know? And so that's the thing that's really hard. All that to say, abusive relationships almost always look completely different from the outside than they do from the inside. And just know that if you know somebody who's been in one.
Oh, yeah.
And everything you're saying to them, if you think that they are weak, just know they've said that to themselves 1,000 times.
Yeah. And it's not helping that you're reinforcing that incorrect perception on them.
Exactly. And it's leading to more shame that would lead them to not report
or not
abuse.
leave or whatever.
Or not leave. Yeah. Because they don't want to get called out by anybody else,
I'm feeling really guilty because I called her weak this last time when she reached out and didn't leave him or whatever.
Did you?
I did.
But you're a human being too, and you're responding to this stuff, and that's
Mikey, you did the right thing because you need to move on with your life. Right?
I think so too.
She needs to make her own decisions, and you need to make your own decisions. So maybe you should have used different words, but you're only human, and you've been back and forth with this for so long that you needed to cut that and let her make her own decisions.
Right.
I don't know if this is going to make you feel better, Mikey, but like one thing that Corey and I have struggled with a lot is just how he handles being in a relationship with me, because he's not doing any of these things, but it's still hard for him to know what to do, and it's kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning, like arguments that we have that you guys would probably just think, oh, they're just fighting, like affect me completely differently, and that's why like Corey is so amazing because what we're doing to combat that is we are in therapy together and we're going through, we're trying to like identify what it is that is triggering me and how to like
work through it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's hard. And I want to say also it's really hard, but it is not as hard as I thought it was going to be. So if you are somebody that is afraid to go to therapy because you think it's going to be really rough, it's not going to be as bad as you think.
And hard work is always worth it, especially for mental health reasons. It's always worth it. Let me just say this about it looking one way on the outside and it being different on the inside. I grew up with my first stepdad, and we had a very, very nice middle-class life, and he was super abusive to us, especially the kids. Like, I remember one very vivid time, because this is when I made the decision to move in with my dad, who was very poor. We were working on the house we had just bought, and I fell asleep because I had been awake for like, I don't know, a day, and I was 12, and he like picked me up and slammed me against the wall and dropped me on the corner where the carpet nails were because there was no carpet. My foot hit the carpet nails and I was like bleeding, and he was just like yelling at me. I was 12. So like at that moment I was like, fuck this. I'm going to go live with my dad. And I literally made the decision then at 12 to go live with my dad, who did not have a room for me. And I slept on the couch till I fucking went to college. Like, like that is just like, I'm not going to deal with that. And then it took my mom like 6 years after that, when he got deployed because he was in the reserves, he got deployed for 2 months and went to Germany. And in that 2 months, she was like, holy shit, I'm in this horribly abusive relationship. I need to get out of this. And then immediately when he got back, they got divorced and she moved. Like, immediately, because
and everybody's going to have different turning points for that.
Well, I just think it happened slowly over the course of their relationship, that she never saw it. Like, she never had a like aha moment like I did when I was 12. And so when it just built up so bad, but it was normalized the whole time. And then when he was gone, she was like, oh, this is what life should be like. So when he got back, she was like, I'm fucking out. And now she's married to a great, great guy. And it's, it took time to work on some stuff because she was attracting shitty people, one of those being my dad. And then she worked on herself and then attracted a guy who was fucking great.
Yeah. And I mean, we could talk about this probably for 2 hours, but that's another thing. Like, there are certain types of people or types of personalities or people who have different life experiences that are going to have those breaking points earlier or later, and it's just, it's because everybody's different.
But it looks great on the outside because that's what the narcissist who's ruining your life needs for it to look like. And whether it's a guy or a girl who's ruining that relationship, they all want that. They all want it to look like a relationship that everyone wants to be a part of because it's great and wonderful and light and fun, but it's never that way on the inside.
Right. And they have to make you think that it's a perfect relationship too. Yeah. And that if there's a problem, it's because of you.
Yep.
Anyways.
Woo, that was fun. Welcome back to Horror Virgin Therapy Hour.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm in my feelings.
We are all trapped in a bunker of our feelings right now.
All right, let's get back into the fucking movie. What the fuck?
So where are we?
My God, dick jokes or something. Come on, let's go.
So he's about to make breakfast. And I mean, Mikey, he may or may not be making sausages. So there you go.
There's your dick joke, Mikey.
Everybody want a banger in the mouth?
Oh my God.
All right, so he's talking about Megan and her magazines, and this is the first time we hear about Megan.
Yes.
And all we know is that she's not with us anymore.
Wait, time out. If I was trapped in a bunker and there were no novels, I would be so fucking pissed.
Really?
Yes.
He's just got like all the different publications of misery. And those are the only books.
Like he only has teen magazines. If I'm trapped for years without like the 7 Harry Potter books or something like something fun to read, I would.
Well, Mikey, he has 17 magazines because he kidnaps young girls for reasons that they never get into, but I fear the worst.
Yeah. Their hair's not going to French braid itself. Okay.
Yeah.
Headcanon here because JGJ, right?
Yes.
He knew the daughter. He knew what she looked like while he was building the bunker. I think he was still conspiracy theory obsessed, all that stuff, building the bunker.
That's probably why they left.
I think the wife tried to take the daughter and leave. He ends up killing the wife during the scuffle. Something happens with her. I think he's been dissolving people in acid a long time.
Oh, yeah. He has a PhD in dissolving.
Right. So then I think he tries to recreate the daughter by taking young women.
Yeah, I think that's why he's taking young women. But I mean, I think that could work either with his daughter being still alive or not.
And it might just be him trying to get them to act like his daughter, which he may or may not have sexually abused.
Right.
But it could just be a complete control thing.
It could.
That he
You're right.
like not like a strictly sexual thing, but you feel that vibe because it like a lot of that stuff goes into control, and sex is part of control with them.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I love is that you can, like, if you're looking at this as a story about abuse, like it doesn't allow you to say, oh, well, my abuser never tried to assault me, so it must not be abuse. You know, It shows that it can still be abusive even if there is no sexual element. Because like I was watching this and I kept seeing like my father, and there was no sexual abuse in our relationship. And then I also saw my first husband, and it was like, because the common denominator there is control and manipulation. You know?
Right.
I mean, even in sexual abuse, that's a common denominator.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just the different end point that the abuser is after.
And I will say the end point escalates this whole time, and she does sort of get out of the situation before a lot of that stuff, I think, happens. But they were on the path to that.
All right. So, but we continue to hear see the power fade off and on, which could be the generator or it could be something fucked up. And she hears a car drive above the bunker at one point.
Above her room, specifically.
Yeah. And she's telling him that, like, hey, I think we should try to get out of here. And he's like, okay, it's time to meet Frank and Mildred, who are the delightful couple next door. And they've baked them a pie and they're going to have a nice little dinner.
Oof.
Except no,
they're pigs.
Yeah.
And I don't mean Frank and Mildred, the neighbors are pigs. I mean, like they're literal pigs that have died because of whatever chemical or nuclear poisoning has happened to them, right?
But it's so cool because it's like these steps that are in this tube, and he goes up, and it's like his version of an airlock, which is an inner door and an outer door.
Yeah. They call it a poor man's airlock, Jen.
Yes, of course. An air hole. But she goes and she sees cornfields at first, and then she can just barely see him out of the corner of her eye. And I love that because it just like it reinforces that trapped feeling too.
Yeah.
That's all she can see. And he keeps giving her this guilt trip. He's like, they weren't as lucky as you are. And then she also sees his car and sees the little dent mark on the side.
Yeah, he sees the accident.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly after this, he confesses to her that he caused the accident because he was driving erratically trying to get home. He doesn't say it was because he was trying to save her life or trying to abduct her or whatever, which is what he was actually trying to do. But he says, it's my fault. I was just trying to get home. I caused the wreck and I felt bad, so I brought you here to save you.
Right. And he does that to try to perpetuate the cycle of abuse that he's got her
Absolutely.
in. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's probably the lie he told himself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't get that yet. So she just goes down into her room. She's like, oh, okay. And I mean, I imagine she's starting to believe him just a little bit, or at least realizing this is more complicated than she thought.
Right. It is not just a locked room like thing, right?
Exactly.
There's something going on outside too.
Yeah. So Emmett comes into her room, and this is when he has that cute little line about, if you want me to do a French braid, let me know.
But how are you going to French braid someone's hair one-handed? Like, there's no way he could actually French braid her hair. That's a ridiculous thing.
He does tell her something really bad's happened out there, and I knew he had the bunker, and that's why I came.
That's true. He does kind of corroborate John Goodman's story that something bad happened. And she's like, oh, what, you saw some lightning? He's like, no, this is something I've never seen before. Something happened. I don't know what it is. but something happened. And honestly, John Goodman doesn't really know what it is either. He thinks nuclear or chemical or alien, right?
Russians or whatever.
Yeah, he has no idea
Martians.
really what happened, but he knows something happened.
But she's trying to say, she's like, no, he abducted me. Like, this is fucked up. He ran me off the road. And Emmett's like, no, this is real. You're lucky to be here, you know?
Yes.
Okay, and so I am also going to post another article that I was reading about this, because if you look at the two types of masculinity in this movie, it's kind of like when we were watching Ravenous. We have toxic masculinity with Howard, and we have non-toxic masculinity with Emmett.
Yeah.
And so they're like counterpoints with each other and allows us to like draw a contrast. And also I think Emmett represents like how people who are in abusive relationships interact with the world outside and how the abusers try to cut that access off, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So aside from the fact that he's just so sweet and dreamy and I love him, even when he's playing a killer in Hush, I love him in that movie too.
Yeah, he's so good.
He's just great. And you should watch The Newsroom because he's good in that too.
Oh, he's amazing in that. That was the first thing I ever saw him, and I loved him.
Shout out to that listener who got him to take a picture holding our logo. Also.
Oh, that was Allison. Yeah.
Allison. Yeah, that was so cool.
I couldn't believe
all right.
that.
While she's saying, but you don't know that. You don't know the air's contaminated. And then fucking Howard is right there behind him. He's like, because I told him.
Yeah, his sneak's at 100 right here.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
He's wearing those bowling shoes from Big Lebowski. Okay, and now it is the most awkward dinner ever.
Oh,
this
my
scene was so
God.
fucking tense.
Jen, can I guess your least favorite line in this scene? When John Goodman's saying, I'm an all right cook. Like, I can cook. I don't love it, though, but I can cook. You'll learn how to love to cook.
Yep.
Megan loved to cook. You'll learn to love to cook.
Ugh, it's so creepy. But the whole thing is creepy. And it just is establishing the sense of control that he has from. Oh, it's so uncomfortable. And Emmett's playing along and he's like, this is the best thing I ever tasted, and kind of trying to like make the situation less tense, you know?
Yeah.
I really related to this. I'm just happy to be alive. This is the best spaghetti sauce ever. I'm not being sarcastic. I really mean it. I'm happy to be alive. And he's like, yeah, you better.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I think this is kind of establishing a little the jealousy that we're going to see a little down the road.
Oh, yeah, because if you're looking at like who could be a potential romantic partner, it's definitely Emmett. I mean, Emmett's dumb, but he is like the right age. He's an attractive-ish guy. I don't know. And I think John Goodman is jealous of that, or he's overly protective because he sees Michelle as like a daughter figure. So like for me, I couldn't tell if he was like going to groom and like rape Michelle.
Yeah.
Or if he just really wanted to play out the she's my daughter scenario because his daughter's either dead or left, right?
Oh, I don't know. But later on in the movie, when they touch hands getting salt, he like flips his shit.
That's in this scene.
Well, and so because like if Emmett were being weird and hitting on him all the time and hitting on her all the time, it would be appropriate for him to say, "Hey, back off," you know. But that's not what's happening.
And
He's
Emmett
just
doesn't
being
hit on
normal.
her at all.
He doesn't, probably because he knows what's going to fucking happen. Because
she is like manipulating Emmett at this point because she's really good at reading people and she knows like sort of what to do. So she keeps asking him to do her favors, which is, I call it the Ben Franklin technique, because if you want someone to like you, even if they don't like you, ask them to do a small favor for you, because if they do it, they will justify it to themselves. Well, I got them a pencil because I sort of like them. They're a good person. So like Ben Franklin would do that to people all the time. He would ask to borrow books from their libraries that he already had because he wanted them to feel like he was ingratiated to them, and that made them like him more. It's the Ben Franklin technique. Anyway, but she does that here, and Emmett's just talking about wanting to get a tattoo or whatever. He even talks about
Thug life. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I didn't want to move on before
Emmett.
we said
Yeah.
he said thug life, and I was like, oh, I love you.
Yeah, and listen, I get it.
Right.
I have a tattoo. Jen, do you have a tattoo?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Mikey, you don't, do you?
No, I don't.
So, Mikey, you've got to get either a Thug Life or a YOLO tattoo.
On your forehead.
Yeah, on your forehead. I did think that was funny because my sister has a YOLO tattoo that she regrets.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So she's Ben Franklining him, right? Asking him to get the salt and all that stuff. And she touches his hand. And then Goodman gets up in her face. And like, I don't know if he throws her into the wall or if she's just so scared she backed into the wall. You don't really see. Either way, it's bad. I don't think he touches her yet. So I think it's just her scared of him.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell. I mean, he doesn't, I don't want to like parse because it is still abuse, even though he may
he still
not.
has a gun on him. So it's still abuse. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Even if he didn't have a gun on him, it's still abuse, you know?
Because he's bigger.
Exactly. He starts yelling at her. And I literally, like, in my mind, I was like, John Goodman is fucking killing it because he's so good at being a bad dude. He's crushing it.
Oh,
Yeah.
He's scared. I mean, he's just so scary.
He's so scary in this. And this is John Goodman we're talking about. The bug and pest control guy from Arachnophobia.
Because he's asking her, why are you insulting me? And he tells Emmett to stay out. And Emmett just like is totally cowed and he's just looking down, kind of like what we were talking about before. But he's saying, like, giving her this guilt trip, like, I've shown you nothing but generosity and hospitality and I want you to apologize. And so she does, but we see that she's trying to get his keys and that was the plan for this whole thing. And so at first you think she doesn't get the keys, but then they all go back and sit down and you realize she does have them in her hand. And I love, you can almost see her hand shake while this is all happening. Because I was like, fuck, this is so tense. And it's like, we talked about it in that Misery episode, like where there's a moment where you stop playing along and you start actually trying to leave. That is like the scariest moment and like arguably the most dangerous moment in any type of these relationships. Yeah. And it just,
and that happens twice in this movie.
It does. Yeah. But so she does have the keys, but it's got his bottle opener on it. Yeah. And he's like tapping the top of the fucking bottle. Like, well, it's important to stay hydrated, you know? And you're like, well, fuck, he's going to find out immediately. And one thing I love is that he does find out immediately and it immediately escalates because he realizes he doesn't have his keys anymore. And as he does, she picks up one of the bottles and smashes him in the fucking face. Yeah. And then runs.
Like jumps over the table. Like she is out.
Yeah, I think she was faking that knee injury maybe. Or she's just awesome. So she gets to the first door and she gets through it and she shut the door behind him. So she's inside the airlock and he's locked out of the airlock. Right. And so it's crazy the way this happens because she runs up to the door and she sees and she's about to unlock it and he's screaming, don't open the door, don't open the door. And then a woman runs up with like a melty face.
Oh, it's so rough, man.
Like it looks like chemical burns or a disease. Yeah. You don't know. It looks nasty.
And she keeps saying, it barely touched
me a little bit.
It barely touched me. What the fuck does that mean?
I know.
And you don't know what it is. She never goes into detail on what it is. So like your mind's running wild. But I was thinking it was the smoke that the alien ship pours down. So it barely touched me. But I was like, what the fuck is happening? Because at this point I still didn't know it was an alien.
Right. You just thought John Goodman was creepy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought that something happened outside because we saw the pigs, right? But I mean, you can't just barely be touched by nuclear fallout.
See, I thought he murdered the pigs.
So yeah, at that point you could have up to that point been like, oh, he mutilated the pigs to make her think like that's a fail-safe for him, but that's not what happened. And the lady is like beating on the window and she like slams her head into it.
Well, she goes from like, please let me in to like, bitch, let me in. Yeah. And then like banging her head. I was like, this is scary too.
So like she's being yelled at from either side of the door. Outside the airlock, the lady's yelling at her to let her in. And on the other side, John Goodman's like, don't let her in. You'll kill us all. That sort of stuff. And thankfully it cuts away before we hear what Michelle explains later is they sat there and just listens to her choke to death on whatever happened to her.
Oh, really? I think I missed that part.
Yeah,
I missed that part too.
When she talks about it later with either JGJ or John Goodman, she's like, we listened to her choke to death out there.
It's either JGJ or JG. I wrote JG for John Goodman in my notes.
Oh, yeah. I wrote Goodman because they're both Johns and they're both JGs. Yeah.
And they're both amazing.
Yeah, they're both awesome.
I think you mean Badman.
Yeah, in this one, he is John Badman. You're right. Yeah.
Definitely. But so now they're back in the room. And so this is in the phase of abuse. This is when he says, I have to confess, I am the one who hit you with the car. So he's trying to make himself the victim now, you know, and this is like the apology phase. Yes. He's making himself the victim and trying to make her feel sorry for him and guilty for how she acted which was a reasonable thing for her to do. But there's also now, which I think is brilliant, there's element of, oh, he was right. You know, he was right the whole time. Yeah. And so he's just telling her that he tried to pass her and he's the reason she went off the road. And of course he had to save her because he's just such a good person.
Oh, he's a good guy. Yeah.
He lets her shower and gives her some of Megan's clothes.
And this is when he like says, I need you to stitch up my face. You did this.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to clean this up. Like, look what you made me do, basically.
Right.
And this is something I think is interesting too. He's saying kindness and generosity are antiquated customs, which I think in a pandemic right now, especially like we're quarantined right now, and there's an element of wanting to help other people and also an element of is the responsible thing for us to do to keep the door closed, because if we let you in, we won't be able to help you, you know? Yeah. So I think it's just weird how it plays with all of that guilt, and I just love it, especially watching it right now, you know? Okay, so now John Goodman is demanding stitches.
But this is another huge like power move, question mark? Yep. It's like a controlling move. Maybe I'll say it that way.
It's the apology phase.
Yeah, he gives her something that she could hurt him with, although he's still holding a gun, or not holding, it's holstered, but still he has a gun on him.
Yeah, well, and he's also making her feel super guilty.
Yes,
for
smashing
attacking
his
him.
face. Yeah.
Yeah, and the woman died, so he's like, look, see, I was right. You were completely wrong.
Yeah.
But we do start talking about Megan, and she's saying Megan wanted to be an artist. And this is when, and I noted Michelle says this, she said, she was your daughter? And he says, yes.
Yeah.
He doesn't ever say that, although he does continue, like, he doesn't give her any reason to doubt that, and he plays into that narrative.
I mean, he agrees with her. Like, she asked the question, and he says yes.
Yes, it was my daughter. But I just thought it was interesting that he doesn't ever outright say it. He's like gaslighting her into believing that it was her daughter.
And I do think Megan was his daughter, but the girl in the photo and the girl with the earring, that's not Megan.
No, it's not.
Oh, yeah. Megan is his daughter. Yeah. But
the thing is, she doesn't know there are actually two different people at play here.
Right.
One's his real life daughter, and one's the girl he kidnapped and murdered.
Right. Well, and so what he says, and we might have our theories, but what he says in the movie is that her mother turned her against him and took her away.
Right. No matter how much you try and protect someone, you can't make them see that safety's in their best interest or something weird and horrible like that.
Right. I can't make them see that I really know what's best and I'm mad at them because they don't. Because that's what narcissists do. They just decide what you want and then they get mad at you when you don't agree with them. You know.
Before Natalie, I was dating a narcissist for sure. And that was 100% what our relationship cycle was like.
But so she's stitching him up and it turns, she doesn't die because she's used to like stitching, just not skin.
Yeah, because she's a clothing designer. Maybe not by trade, but that's like her vocation. And she wants that to be her job, right?
Now we get Emmett's story and Michelle's story. So Emmett, he starts with, and I love how they just kind of bond with each other, but that it never becomes sexual. You know?
No, it doesn't. I honestly got the brother sister we're in this together vibe. Too. And maybe if they had gotten out together, they may have developed a romantic relationship. But there's never any of that. You know?
Yeah, and I love it.
Me too.
I got the every time we've touched, we've been physically assaulted by a huge man kind of vibe. That
Oh yeah. Imagine what he would do if he caught us kissing or having sex or something like that. Yeah. But honestly, I mean, she can easily resist JGJ because he's not wearing a sweater, right, Jen?
Exactly. Although, as I noted on Twitter, I will take a good flannel in a pinch.
I saw that. I love that. I almost responded with every Eddie Vedder GIF I could find.
Yeah. But so Emmett's talking about how he didn't really get good grades in high school, but that he was on the track and field team.
He was apparently really, really great because he got a full ride scholarship to some university.
Louisiana Tech.
And they even, after paying for all of his college, sprung for some bus fare to get him there.
It's classy.
And then he just was so sure he wasn't going to work out. He's like, it's never going to work out for me. I'm just going to not go because I don't want to fail.
I'm going to self-sabotage,
Exactly, and that's what he does. So he never gets on the bus, never buys another bus ticket, and just doesn't go to college.
But then she says, well, if you'd gone, you might be dead right now, which may or may not be true.
Right.
But, I mean, also, like, that was a choice you made, and now we're here, and you can't go back and change it, you know? And so then we find out what her story is, and this is when we find out that she had an abusive parent.
Hashtag herstory, guys.
Her story, oh, pardon me.
Oh boy.
I mean, it's the patriarchy, man.
I know.
And I like how she's telling this because she's telling us, and it also doesn't draw out the story, because she's telling us in the context of she saw a little girl being abused by her parent in public and she wanted to do something about it because she had an abusive parent and her brother was always there to take the worst of it. So when you said that about she and John Gallagher Jr. having a brother-sister vibe, I was like, yeah, she's probably leaning into that a little bit, you know? But she didn't do anything about it, and that's how she always responds. She panics and runs, which is what we saw her do in the first scene, even though we don't know exactly what she was running away from.
Right, and honestly, it may not have been that big of a deal in the first scene, but it still triggered her running, right?
Right, exactly.
The only thing that really bothered me about this scene is they are on either side of a cinder block wall, and they are talking quietly. And they would have to be yelling for each other to hear them.
Did you not see they had the little can and it had a string on it?
They had hollowed out bean cans. They were like...
And now it is jukebox time.
Yeah.
And I love that it was I Think We're Alone Now.
I know.
Because I love that song. And I like the Tiffany version. But
I grew up thinking Tiffany wrote that song.
Yeah, me too. I know. And I mean...
And then I realized that no one like that writes music. They're just figureheads that can sing.
Yeah.
Although that's not fair. Tiffany may have written some songs. I honestly don't know. But a lot of those types of people don't write their own music.
And both of those versions of that song are good because it's a good song.
Yeah, they're great.
But we have like a puzzle montage and we're having nice dinner and they're decorating their rooms and everything's great. And so I wanted to mention this because this is in the cycle of abuse. This is what the honeymoon phase is.
Right.
Everything's fine now. We're going to like pretend that there are no problems and just pretend that everything is happy and looks great.
Yeah. And there is that phase. Like there's the traumatic event, there's the apology phase, and then there's the week that things are back to normal and everything's great. And maybe we're going to work it out. And then something else happens and it's probably going to be worse. And it just continues this cycle of domestic abuse on either side.
And as the relationship continues, the honeymoon phases get shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah, and it becomes all abuse. Yeah.
It does. And it becomes a lot harder to get out, too.
Yeah.
But I also like a good montage.
We all like a good musical montage.
Who doesn't, Jen? Oh, my God. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to say about this honeymoon phase, well, after we're having our musical montage. That's fine. Because I think I watched this in 2016, and that was when I was still in denial about a lot of the stuff that had happened. And I fell for this. And I was like, oh, he is a good guy. Oh, phew, thank goodness. Yeah, I really did.
Oh,
and
man.
But I mean, that just kind of speaks to the conditioning that you have in your head, you know?
You were out of that abusive relationship, though, right?
I was out of it, yeah. Okay. But I mean, I wasn't really, like, I had kind of a moment. I think it was in 2016. Some other things happened that year where I was like, oh. And I got triggered, and then
I wonder what that is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I didn't even really start to understand what the trigger was until probably the next year.
Yeah.
And so, but I just want to say I did fall for this, and I just think it says John Goodman is an effective actor, and
He's
also
so good.
this is a real thing that people deal with,
Yeah.
and it is really hard to like see the truth a lot of times. You know?
I do like that in this montage, it ends with them participating in what I assume is going to be some future Mikey month where they're watching a movie called Cannibal Airlines.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. And I've never seen it, but that's got to be a Mikey movie, right?
Oh, yeah. I think Mikey's actually in that movie. Well, and so, what we hear is there are some puzzle pieces missing. They hear a huge noise and the bunker shakes.
It sounds like a tank above them.
It does, yeah.
It's insane. It's not like the car sound you heard earlier.
No, it's
bigger.
like helicopters and tanks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But so I love how this all plays out because an alarm starts going off and he's like, oh, that's bad.
Oh, yeah. At first, John Goodman's like, don't worry about it. I'm sure it's just a military response. You know, the first wave was them blowing up the major population centers, and now like the Russians or whatever are like looking for places like this. We'll be fine. And then what I assume was like a proximity alarm starts going off, and he's like, oh, that's bad.
And I just liked how the cadence of that I thought was funny.
Yeah.
Because we find out something is blocking the hatch and that they're going to run out of breathable air. And he says, here you go. Here's a way that you can escape, and you're the only one who's small enough to fit. But can you use this escape route that I'm showing you without realizing what I'm doing to go save the day?
I honestly don't think it's that, because it's the air filtration system.
It is. No, I don't think he realized what he was doing.
Well, I don't think he's doing that either, because the other place is locked. He knows they can't get out because,
that's true.
quote unquote, Megan, or whatever her name actually is, was able to get there and was able to scratch help into the top of it, but she still wasn't able to get out.
I don't think he wants to do it, but he just is forced to.
I agree. I'm just saying he's now introduced a place that she can go that he can't,
That's
giving
true.
her kind of a
That
safe
is true.
space.
He also knows she can't get out. Like, he still has
That's
control.
true. Oh,
Even if
yeah.
he didn't want her to know about that area, he still has control over it.
Well, and he's such a fucking narcissist. He's never going to think that he's lost control.
Exactly.
And the second he does, he's going to try to regain it. Yeah. But I just say this is presenting her with another option.
But she does start John McClaning through the air vent and
She
does
does.
get to the place where the air filtration system is. She turns the breaker on and off twice or whatever, and then it does work. And then
Yeah.
she sort of does some investigating and sees the back hatch or whatever you call
Yeah.
that. So she climbs the ladder, sees that it's locked, and also sees help scratched in the door.
Yeah, with a little blood.
Yeah. And then she gets down and sees the earring. And maybe she even steps on the earring, and then that's what
Yeah.
she sees. Yeah.
It's just because that, John Goodman can't leave because every 103 minutes he's got to type in the numbers.
Right, exactly. He's got him
Is
written
this a
down.
lost thing? What is happening
is.
right now?
So she's fixed this thing, and she steps on this earring and she picks it up, but we don't see it yet until she's downstairs and she's showing John Gallagher Jr. this thing that she stepped on. And she's showing Emmett, and she's like, hey, he's lying about this because this is the earring that Megan was wearing in this picture. And then she shows him the picture of Megan. See, here's the earring. It matches. And he's like, hold on. That's not Megan.
Not Megan. Yeah.
And this part really creeped me out. She's like, that's my friend Brittany, or like, that's somebody who I know from this because
We
small
went to
town.
school together or whatever. Yeah.
No, we went to school with his his younger sister, 2 years younger.
Right. And her name is Brittany, and she disappeared a couple of years ago, and we don't know what the fuck happened to her.
Right.
And that's when the second picture falls out. The shoe to drop, if you will.
Yeah.
And we see a picture of her, Brittany, who we've just found out is not Megan, like sitting really uncomfortably with John Goodman. But I will also say it's not a sexual pose. You know,
it's not really, no. But we do see that she's wearing the exact clothing that Michelle is wearing.
Yeah. And so this is when they start to realize, okay, this is fucked up. We got to get out. And then they start to hear him coming. And Emmett's plan, bless his little heart, his plan is just to get the gun and to try to get him to confess. And then I think he says, like, we can't be the only survivors either. And I think it's notable in, like, when we're looking at the control element here that John Goodman is not trying to contact anybody.
Right.
You know?
Yes. No radio.
Exactly.
Nothing.
Because I think any, like, what are they called? They're not trippers. They're planners, packers.
They're doomsday preppers.
Preppers. Yeah. Like, I think one of the things you want is a CB radio so you can try to communicate. And he doesn't do that at all, which is really ominous when you stop and think about it, but you don't necessarily notice. He just says, no, they're all dead. There's no point. Yeah. Because that fits the narrative that he needs to keep her
Absolutely.
down there.
It reinforces his control.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But I like that they've introduced that now. And so John Goodman comes down and busts up their little planning and puts on some song so now they're starting to make a plan, and we think it's going to involve the shower curtain. Howard is watching Pretty in Pink.
Yes.
Because it was one of Megan's favorite movies, which is also creepy. And so Emmett's kind of laying this groundwork and saying, hey, I don't want to tell you how to run the place, but...
Well, yeah, whatever Michelle touched when she got down here was probably contaminated too. We may want to get rid of it. And at first, John Goodman's like, no, whatever. I'm sure it's fine. And then he pauses Pretty in Pink and he's like, fine. So he throws away gloves, he throws away the shower curtain and all of that stuff. And then we cut to them being Emmett and Michelle fishing it out of the dumpster or whatever they use for trash or whatever.
Like immediately too. I thought that was funny. Like he dumps it and then they open it up and it's almost like there's a plan montage here. Although
it is. I mean, that doesn't happen immediately afterwards. I'm sure that's like a day later or, later that night or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so what their plan is, because she was a clothing designer, she's going to take the shower curtain and make like a gas mask suit or like a suit that will allow her to go out.
Yeah, or one of them. She only has enough material to make one of them. So they haven't discussed who's going to go out. John Goodman decides for them.
They do have a discussion where he's like, I'll keep him tied up with the gun. You go out and see.
You know what? You're right. You're right. Absolutely.
And so, okay. And this is the charades part, which creeped me out too.
I thought it was super interesting that John Goodman cannot think of the word for an adult girl. Like, and I'm saying
this
it that
was
way.
So creepy.
That was creepier than what happens next. Like, it was 100% like he couldn't think of Little Women. It's a very famous book.
Well, he couldn't conceptualize Michelle's character as an adult.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Which is like such a creative, creepy way to put someone's like psychopathology on display.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he blames it on Emmett because he can't have actually made a mistake.
Yeah, try to be more specific next time.
But then it's his clue. And this part creeped me out too because he looks and is like, I'm always watching.
This part would have creeped me out if immediately Natalie didn't go, oh, it's Santa Claus. It's Santa Claus. Like, she was like playing along with it. It was hilarious. I was like, oh, yeah, it is Santa Claus. So everything he said that was super creepy, I was like, oh, yeah, Santa Claus would do that. Yeah, Santa Claus would do that.
I think this is another part of that, like, hyper vigilance is that, like, we, the audience, immediately know it's Santa Claus because we get there fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But you see them freak out from the jump. And I think it's a really good, I think it's this taboo game is such a really creative way to show all those dynamics.
Oh, I agree completely. Yeah.
In a way that can still maintain this system for the story because they can all laugh it off as a game, because I mean, there's probably part of John Goodman. I mean, we don't know when he finds out that they've been working on something, but I mean, he could know at this point, but so the next thing we see is she's in her room and she's like putting everything under the mattress. And he says he needs help with something. And so now he shows them that he's got a vat of acid in this delightful, like, common room that they've all been living in and doing puzzles in. And he wants to pull it. They pull it into the bathroom. He makes them pull it with him into the bathroom.
Well, that's his room.
Yeah, exactly. And it talks about how it dissolves humans right down to the bone.
Yeah.
And Emmett's like, why the fuck do you have this thing and why are you showing it right now? And this is when he says, I know what you've been doing.
Yes. You think I'm stupid?
Yeah.
The tension in this scene is
I
it's
know.
terrible.
And because he's got an X-Acto knife and the duct tape. So I don't think he has enough information to know what they are doing, but he knows they're doing something.
Right.
And for a person like him, that's immediately he's going to assume all of the worst things. It's creeped me out how he said this. He's going to give them a chance to tell them what they're up to, or they're going in the barrel while they're alive to feel it. Which,
yeah.
And he also drops them both in the vassets.
And you see it bubble up. So he's not bluffing about what is in that barrel.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right,
It's not just olive oil.
He's put people there. He's put toys and stuff.
He's put his poops there, Mikey?
Yes.
Ooh.
Where do you think those cat puzzle pieces went?
Like, why?
So then Emmett steps in. This was so manipulative and shows me he knows who he's dealing with. He's like, I wanted her to respect me the way she respects you. So I wanted to try to get your gun. And that's just reinforcing everything in Howard's fucked up mind.
Right.
And he says, I'm sorry. And Howard, good man that he is, accepts his apology.
Oh, yeah. He didn't fucking accept shit.
Yeah.
Because immediately he blows his head off, man. He like shoots him right in the face in front of Michelle. It's so messed up, man.
It is messed up, and it makes me so sad because I love that character so much, and I don't think we actually see it.
Me too.
Like it's off
We
screen.
don't see it. No, we do see him in the barrel at one point, but we don't. You don't see him getting shot.
Well, and so then we see Michelle like losing her mind like a regular person would, and him trying to calm her down.
Yeah, and you hear the high pitched ring of like what it would sound like if you shot a gun off in that confined space. Yeah,
and he's trying to calm her down and saying, "You're safe now," and now it's just us, which is
the way it's supposed to be. He says that.
The next part isn't something you should see, so why don't you go down to your room?
Yeah, and she's like getting the hazmat suit ready, right?
She is.
Because apparently her fashion school taught how to survive an apocalypse 101.
It did. That was one of the challenges in the early episodes. When there were a lot of people, it was a team challenge.
Right, absolutely.
But she's looking through Emmett's wallet and she sees that the bus ticket is still there.
Yeah, the bus
and
ticket
that's
that he
a
was
little
supposed to take is
sad.
there, yeah.
I know.
And then when you see John Goodman come to her room with the ice cream, he is in a button-down shirt. He's shaved, and he's like bringing her treats. Why don't we do dessert before dinner tonight?
Ooh, because we can do whatever we want now because it's just us.
Yeah. He pretty quickly sees the stuff under her quote-unquote bed.
Because the screw from the vent falls out
that's
as
right.
he's walking out, and that's where she's put the gas mask. And one thing I love about this movie is they don't he doesn't almost see for 5 scenes. He almost sees and then he immediately sees. They don't drag that stuff out. And so he finds out, he sees what's going on, and then she locks him in the room.
Yes.
And runs out into the common area and sees Emmett in the acid, which is so sad.
Yeah, I was like, no, not like this. I don't want to see this.
I know. And as he's chasing her, he's yelling like, I saved you and this is how you repay me, and just kind of laying that guilt in.
Yeah, it's very intense, man.
It is.
Yeah.
And he says, this is how you repay me. And she says, no, this is.
And then she starts to play the floor as lava with him, and he fails super hard at it.
Yeah. I mean, literally, he falls super hard into it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because the floor is not lava, it's acid now.
Right.
Because she kicks over the acid and it spills on the floor and he falls into it. And she's she's like in the kitchen of Crawl. She's like kind of walking over so she doesn't have to touch the floor.
Yeah, she like jumps over everything and gets out of the room.
Right.
Which I don't know how she did, but she does.
Because she's awesome. Same way she jumped over the table the first time she smashed him in the face,
Yeah, that's fair.
because she's spry, Tom.
Yeah,
she
she's
is.
spry as hell. And then she ties the hazmat suit around her leg and then climbs into the air vent. And she tries to...
And Shawshank's out.
Yeah, and tries to Shawshank out, but she has to get around him stabbing the air vent with this big effing knife.
I know. While the place is on fire, too, because the acid lit a
the
lamp
acid
cord.
caught on fire, yeah.
Now, I do like droopy acid face John Goodman.
Oh, man, it was so
it's-
good, yeah.
Yeah, because he confronts her while she's before she starts Shawshanking.
Right.
And it's like Two-Face, only we don't see it clear enough for it to look silly, I
Right.
think,
Yeah.
He doesn't even talk. He just makes like guttural animal noises and charges.
He's saying, stay with me.
He like grabs her leg, and then there's that really, really like big moment.
Yeah, like as she's in the vent and he's been stabbing up, like he also grabs her foot, and I was like,
Grabs her foot,
he's
yeah.
gonna like do the Pet Cemetery thing with her heel with that knife,
Oh, yeah.
But it's gross because his skin's all melting off of his hand too,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind
he's
of
yelling like "Stay with me" and stuff, and she's like "No," and she kicks his hand, and then she gets to the air filtration room, and then puts on the hazmat suit, and she is serving us some curtain post-apocalyptic realness.
Yeah, would you say she's making it work, Todd?
She is making it work.
Well, and she's about to make the lock work too. And this is
I
interesting.
was like, she doesn't have the keys. She can't get out.
But because he had told her that story while he was power move making her stitch up her face about like spraying the lock and then breaking it, like she knows what to do. And if you notice, I didn't notice she grabbed this as she was like about to kick the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she sprays the lock with a compressed air and she's banging on it. And did you guys think of the Changeling when she was banging on this lock? Like when he's banging over and over again?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I was like, I don't think this is gonna work.
Well, yeah, and I think they play it out long enough so that you think that, and you're like, "Fuck, she's gonna die from smoke inhalation." But then it does work, and I don't think they overplay that.
And now she's out. She sees
out.
like the cornfield, and she sees the truck, so she goes to the truck, and then she's been out for like 30 seconds, and she ruins her hazmat suit.
I know, man. It's almost like it was made of cheap material, you know. But she's panicking and she's trying to close it, and she gets it closed, and then she sees a flying V.
Yeah, the birds are back. The earth is healing.
Exactly. Well, and so she takes the mask off, and we realize like there is no toxic air.
I still would not have taken the mask off.
Right.
Because it's like birds are different than me. So like
That's
I
true.
don't know.
They still need oxygen to survive. So like I understand the thought process.
Yeah, but if
Yeah.
it's like a biological weapon or something.
I mean, I get that.
Well, but it turns out the air is fine though, because we
Yeah,
don't
the
know
air
if
is
it
fine.
was a nuclear thing, and so
Right,
we're
right.
led to believe that she was fine. And I love that they did that because I think it plays into John Goodman's whole dynamic is that there is a threat, but he's taking it and he's twisting it to make it suit his own narrative. You
Yes.
know?
which is why I love that there's an actual threat.
I do too. Yeah, that it's not all in his head. It's that because like
Yeah.
what happens is he goes down in there and they do not try to access any news after that. So they just start spinning and building this thing up into whatever suits their narrative. And what suits his narrative is that the air is toxic, so you can't ever leave this place, you know? But so she starts to hear the Jurassic Park noises again, and then she looks off and she sees these like not helicopters. They're like alien copters. And
It's a
she's-
flying saucer.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, and she's hearing bombing, and then
But
like
the flying saucer thing flies over closer to her and then lands in the cornfield, and she runs and sort of hides in that little pig pen.
yes, that's right. And then, but like there's something around her explodes at one point.
Oh, the explosion, Jen, is the like fire in the bunker explodes
Yes,
the
the
bunker.
bunker
Yeah.
explodes.
Oh, that's
yeah.
right.
That's what
yeah,
the
I just
explosion
thought
is.
it was like alien
And
shit.
that's what calls the saucer or whatever it is over because it notices
come-
that and
yeah.
then lands and goes to investigate. And so she runs into the pig pen and then looks out, and that's when you see the alien for the first time kind of
Right.
sneak out by the car.
If you were looking carefully, Todd, the UFO comes by the explosion and drops the alien off.
Okay.
And so she like sets her own car alarm off to try to distract it. And I love how we kind of just see just a little bit of it. And if you noticed earlier in the movie, John Gallagher Jr. was talking about like alien worms, you know, which I think is cool that that's what these things look like, you know?
Yeah, at least their mouths. But it wasn't
Right.
her car. It was the lady who came to the doors car because she has to go and grab the keys out of her pocket. And she's also in the pig pen.
Right.
And as
Yeah.
the alien's poking his head through like where the pigs go in and out of the pig pen, she like sounds the alarm off on the lady's car. And then it
Right.
runs to the car.
So now she's running to the farmhouse and like there are lights on and she's trying to like call for help or something. And then we see this giant alien ship like rising up from the
Much,
farmhouse.
much bigger than the last one we saw. Yeah.
It's really
No, it's the same
cool.
one. It's the same one. It's just closer.
That could be. Proximity wise, it could just be closer.
Right.
Yeah. This movie goes from like a single location sort of like torture, like The Room sort of movie to a quiet place real quick.
It does, yeah. Not even to a quiet place, like War of the Worlds, real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want-
That's fair. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times I wrote, what the fuck is happening in my notes at this point? Or just like, oh shit, because it's crazy.
It is crazy.
I like the moment where she's like, "The fuck."
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, because this big ship orbs up on her and starts putting out this gas, and then she puts on the mask that she took off when she saw the birds. So the gas sort of passes over her, and she's fine because she has the mask on.
right.
And then she sees the other alien. Maybe not other, but the alien the ship dropped, and it starts to run at her, and she gets in the truck, but before she can close the door, it like is right there, and it sucks her mask off her face.
It's like,
I
oh,
was
that's
like,
nice.
oh, what the fuck?
I know, dude.
Yeah.
And then, like, the big ship picks the truck up and is like
Oh,
pulling
yeah.
her in. But luckily, she brought that bottle of whatever with her.
Yeah.
Pulls her up with tentacles. I think
Yeah.
we need to be pretty clear about this. It's not some ray gun or magnetic
So she's getting tractor beamed up, seemingly without anything touching the truck, pulled into.
I hate you.
No, it clearly is tentacles.
It's an organic technological spaceship with a fucking mouth that's going to eat you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I do think it's a really cool creature design, and it's unique, but it's not so outlandish that all you're thinking about is how weird it is.
But also, the tentacles gently put the truck like 3/4 of the way down before it lets go when it's blowing up.
Because they just drop, but they're still stuck, which I thought was really cool. But so before that happens, she's made this Molotov cocktail out of this bottle of whiskey, and she just has the best, like, I think it's even left-handed aim in the world.
Yeah.
She leans out the window and throws it and waits till the little mouth that does not look like a butthole at all opens.
Jen, what do you do for your life? But yeah, she tosses that Molotov cocktail into that brown hole and it explodes everything.
Yeah, this alien does not consent to this kind of backdoor action.
No, and you gotta get consent. And if you don't, things are gonna explode.
Exactly. And that's on you.
That's when shit happens.
Anyway, it blows up.
Yeah, it does blow up, and
it does blow
because
up.
the tentacles are sticky. It like extends the tentacles all the way down, and it like slows her descent. And so she doesn't like die when it falls from 40 feet. It sort of does make sense, but the thing about those old trucks is no airbags.
Yeah.
All right. So she's now in her car again, and it starts, and she's driving away, but not before she runs over the name of the movie, because she takes out the mailbox, and the mailbox says 10 Cloverfield Lane.
She ran over the address of the movie.
I know.
Well, anyway, so she does like drive away, and she's hearing on the radio that there are people in Dallas.
It's in Houston and I think Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge, that's right.
Yeah.
So I think the safety is in Baton Rouge.
It is.
But they need people to help in Houston.
Yes.
And so she chooses the life of adventure. And I like that.
I do too.
She could go towards safety or she could go towards adventure, and she goes towards adventure. And I'm on board.
It's going towards adventure, but it's also going towards helping people, because now she has this.
That's what I mean,
she knows what to do, and she's not running away from her problems anymore.
Yeah, like no joke. I want to see a sequel where she gets to Houston and sort of like helps the resistance or whatever.
Yeah.
I would love to see
and
that.
The actress Mary Elizabeth Winstead has said she's down for it. I don't think that's
awesome.
In production, but yeah, I think this kind of completes her arc in the movie, because we see her running away, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with running away, because if she had gone to Baton Rouge, that would have been totally understandable.
Extricate yourself from the situation. But what she does is she starts running towards it, which shows that she's taking more ownership of it.
Exactly.
Well, I like the radio message, because it was like, hey, we have safety. If you're a civilian, you're not comfortable, come to Baton Rouge. We have a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
We're in Houston. We need medics, and we need people who can fight. Anybody who's a survivor. Mm-hmm. They use the word, if you're a survivor, come to Houston or whatever. And then she like stops and thinks about it for a while, and it kind of uses that terminology, and then she goes, which I like even better. Which she's not a runner anymore. She's a fighter. She's a survivor. Or
yes.
Right. I felt really weird calling myself a survivor for a long time, because like I had to like make myself believe that I was actually a victim of something, but that I do think there's a lot of empowerment in that word, and I like that's the way I think I would prefer to be referred to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so the thing that I love about this ending, and I'm going to link an article that talked about this, is because if we're looking at this movie in the theme of a domestic abuse story, because this ending got a lot of backlash, and people were like, what the fuck, where are these aliens coming from? What the hell? Yeah, people were really, and I think a lot of it was just they weren't expecting it, and they didn't quite know how to unpack it.
Did they not know it was a Cloverfield movie? Like I was fucking thrown off by this movie because I hadn't seen Cloverfield. But I'd imagine Cloverfield addresses the alien stuff, right?
It's got a big fucking monster in it the whole time. So yeah.
Okay.
Well, but so what I love about this movie, if we're looking at it through the narrative of domestic abuse, is it shows that once you are out the door and you're no longer in that relationship, it's not like everything is easy and everything is like sunshine and roses. It's that it's still going to be hard, and you're still going to have to deal with a lot of things. And I like that it wasn't just this Disney ending of the movie is over and everything's happy, because I think that's not reality.
Yeah, and because after you get out of that situation, you still have to do the work of helping yourself get over it and forgive yourself for it. And do that work that most people need therapy for. And honestly, there's no shame in that. Therapy is amazing.
It really is. Yeah. And I mean, just to put it in context, like I was married to my first husband like 11 years ago. you know, and
Yeah.
it took me probably a good 8 years to even realize I needed to go to therapy, you know? So yeah. And it's not too late. You're not like ruined forever or broken, you know, you can get help, and I think you should.
I mean, every day is a new starting point. So
It is.
start. Or if you don't
Exactly.
want to start today, start tomorrow.
Exactly. And it's okay for you to just take care of yourself for today.
Absolutely.
But this is a great way for you to take care of yourself also. And I want to say again, it's not as hard as I thought it was going to be.
I'll agree.
Yeah.
Getting into therapy, I was very, very scared of, and my dad sort of made me do. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for that.
I'm really proud of you, Jen, for
Well, thank you.
getting out of that and then going to therapy.
Yeah.
Thank you. One day I would like to be proud of myself for that, and I think I probably will.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm there yet, but.
And that's the
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roll
Phew.
credits.
Thanks for rolling with us on that one, guys. That was a lot to talk about.
That was heavy. Okay, so let's talk about it, though. So having
Yeah.
seen the movie, having talked about the movie, what do you think? Let's start with Mikey.
I still really love the movie.
Yeah. So it holds up?
I think it holds up. I think it's just as scary as when I saw it in theaters. Maybe a
Yeah.
little less because I've seen it before.
Sure, you know what's coming.
I just think the realistic portrayal of like John Goodman's John Badman is so unnerving.
Absolutely.
It's just I and then like you feel for Michelle the whole movie, and I think this movie like does her perspective so well.
I think so, too.
I loved it more this time.
Well, you're seeing it through a different lens.
I am. Yeah, I'm a totally different lens. And I think this is one of those movies where, I mean, it was received well, although it did get that backlash I was talking about. But I think this is one of those movies that really benefits from analysis of it and like hearing, like I read a couple of articles that picked up some things that I didn't necessarily pick up. And so I think
Yeah.
there's a lot here that you might not necessarily see the first time you watch it, you know?
Sure.
But yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, there weren't that many super scary parts for me. The whole thing is ominous and like really tense, but there weren't like any jump scares or anything like that. That's the reason for me it felt more like a thriller, and I like thrillers. So like I liked this movie. I thought it was good, and John Badman is insane in it. And everyone's doing a great job. I just think that he is doing a Toni Collette level performance. That I honestly don't think we've seen someone do that well at it until Toni Collette. I mean, I think this is a movie that if you're a horror virgin, you can and should watch. It's really
I think
quite
so,
good.
too.
I think Bradley Cooper sucked in this movie.
All right, so let's do box office.
Box office.
All right, so this movie came out March 11th, 2016. So what do you guys think the budget was for this movie?
$5 million.
Okay. It is a single location movie, more or less.
Yeah.
Right? So, Mikey, what do you think?
7 to 10 million?
Okay. You're a little bit closer, Mikey. The production budget was $15 million. And I would
Okay.
say it does sort of have a bigger budget feel because everyone is like very, very good. John Goodman's an amazing actor. JGJ and both the lady who played Michelle
Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Mhm.
were amazing, but I'm sure they were cheaper than like a John Goodman was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Although I think they're doing great too.
I think so too, but they also weren't very known, you know?
Right. And I do think this helped them become more known.
I do too.
So, what do you think it made in just its opening weekend, which was, again, March 11th, 2016?
80 million.
This is just its opening weekend domestic.
Okay.
45.
45 million. Okay. So it was number 2 the weekend it came out. It got beat by Zootopia that made $51 million.
Zootopia was fire, though, man.
I
That
know. I
was-
love
ugh.
Zootopia. And Zootopia had only been out for 2 weeks. But this movie still made $24 million, almost $25 million
Nice.
domestically in its opening weekend. So it did real well. It beat out Deadpool and London Has Fallen and Whiskey Tango Foxtrot and a few other movies. What do you guys think it made in its full theatrical run domestic?
100 million.
80.
Mikey, you're closer. It made $72 million in its domestic run. But Jen, you were really close too because internationally it made $36 million, putting it at $108 million. And then it made
Boom.
an additional $8 million in domestic DVD and Blu-ray sales. So it
Nice.
made a lot of money on that $15 million budget. And I definitely understand why they've been making more of these, although it sounds like they've only made one more of these. And that sounds like it's going to roll us into some Jen's fun facts. So
Jen's
Jen,
fun
you got some fun facts for us?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hit us with your fun facts.
So this was written and directed by Dan Trachtenberg, and this was actually his directorial debut.
Oh, wow.
Which
Okay.
I think is very impressive.
Yeah, nailed it right out of the park.
It was produced by J.J. Abrams and some other, I hate to say some other people, but I had never heard of these other people. The other notable person that produced it was Damien Chazelle, who directed La La Land and Whiplash. Whiplash.
No shit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
this is insane because I was a professional drummer for many years and I still haven't seen Whiplash. I got to see
it's
it.
so
Oh my God.
good.
I know.
Oh,
Everyone
it's
tells
so
me that. I
good.
haven't seen it.
And that is another story of an abusive relationship that's not like a romantic relationship at all. Oh, it's so
Right.
I think you'll really like it.
It's like a
so
horror
good.
movie itself.
So it was originally, it was started as a spec script called The Cellar, written by Josh Campbell and Matt Stucken. I hope I'm saying those names right. And then Paramount, I think, bought it, and Bad Robot ended up getting it. And so as they were filming it, they started to notice like there were a lot of like parallels to Cloverfield. So I think during production is when they decided to turn it into a Cloverfield movie, and they've called it a spiritual sequel and a blood relative of Cloverfield, because the aliens don't look the same at all. Like both of those movies can stand independently. Well, the other one's Godzilla, and I think there's some spidery kind of things.
They're parasites that live on the Godzilla that fall off.
Oh, that's right. But because it's found footage, you don't ever get a clear enough look to really find out too much about it. It is. I think Cloverfield is great.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not. I haven't seen it.
But the cast didn't actually find out that this was going to be a Cloverfield adjacent movie until a couple of days before the trailer dropped, because they told them the title of the movie was 10 Cloverfield Lane. And they added in the scene where she runs over the mailbox.
Wow. Okay.
So it wasn't intended to be Cloverfield.
Interesting.
Once they had gotten the script, they brought Damien Chazelle in to rewrite it. And so I read some things about the original ending where she was going to leave or get out and then realize that the air's not contaminated. And then there were no aliens at the farmhouse, but she was just going to drive to the nearest city and find that it had been like ruined or bombed.
Okay.
Which I'm glad that they changed the ending.
Yeah, I feel like I like this ending better than that, but that wouldn't have been bad either.
I do. Yeah, I think so too. But I mean, I feel like it just says more here.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly because Damien Chazelle rewrote it and he added a lot of that domestic abuse element into it, kind of like what you see in Whiplash. He was supposed to direct it, but he dropped out of directing because Whiplash got funding. And so he went to work on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the movie Mikey was talking about earlier was originally called God Particle, and they kind of did the same thing with it, and they turned it into the Cloverfield Paradox. And that is the third Cloverfield that is on Netflix right now. One thing that's notable about it is the first commercial for it was during the Super Bowl, and then it immediately dropped on Netflix right after the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Shit, I remember that. Yeah.
So I've got a couple of Easter eggs. Apparently there are a lot of Easter eggs that I don't think I caught. So if you know any Easter eggs and you want to send them in, we would love to hear them.
Send us at us on social with your Easter eggs, because I want to hear all of them.
Because I know that J.J. Abrams does a lot of Easter eggs like that. Like the name of the gas station is Kelvin, and he has named a couple of things Kelvin. I think there's a Kelvin in just about all of his productions because that was the name of his grandfather.
Oh.
I don't know. Isn't that sweet?
He actually talks about how his grandfather taught him how to storytell.
Yeah.
If you watch his TED Talk, it's so good, but it's all about that. Yeah.
And I think he tries to name things. Like the visual effects company, I think, is named Kelvin. Okay, the network carrier on her cell phone is BRT, which is for Bad Robot.
Yeah.
Which is the production company. And this was an interesting one. I don't know. It had to have been intentional. But Mary Elizabeth Winstead drives a Volkswagen Bora in this movie, which is the same car that she drives in Final Destination 3. Which I think
she's
is
Final
interesting.
Destination 3?
She is, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and my last fun fact, the body count here is 3, and everybody in this movie dies off screen. Which I think
that's
is
fair,
interesting. Yeah. And I mean, it's a small cast, so there's not going to be a huge body count. Although I guess you could count all of the millions of people that got destroyed by whatever the aliens are. But
sure.
It wasn't until I read that I was like, oh yeah, we don't see anybody die. And those are my fun facts.
Well, thank you for your fun facts, Jen. Before we move on to what we're doing next, do you want a Todd fun fact?
I do want a Todd fun fact.
So I made the social share for this movie that we were doing this movie, not having seen the first one. And I literally Googled 10 Cloverfield Lane alien, and I photoshopped that in to the social share for it, thinking it would be a major part in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was watching the movie and I was like, I guess there's no fucking alien. Like, what is so like, if you go back and look at that social share announcing that we were doing this movie, I spent like 40 minutes getting that thing in there. And then
is so funny.
it's only in there. Like, I think I spent more time putting the alien in the social share than the alien is on screen.
Wow. I still can't believe you went in not knowing what Cloverfield means.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm so happy for you.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Honestly, it made it for a cool turn, and I wasn't pissed about it. I was like, oh shit, what is happening? So let's do some scary scale.
All right. Hey, listeners, our scary scale is a scale we use to rank how scared we were by the movie today. It's not a ranking of the quality of the film. It's how scared we were when we watched it. Our 1 example is Ghostbusters. Our 10 example is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. All right. Todd, what you got?
I want to give this a 4.
Interesting.
It's not super scary, but like I've lived in a house that was sort of like really tense all the time like this when I was a little kid. And it like gave me some real like flashbacks to that. So like I was uncomfortable while watching it. It wasn't super scary. It was just ominous and uncomfortable. And John Goodman does a really good job of being that narcissistic, controlling asshole.
Yep. Mikey?
I think I'm going to give it a 5.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. Look at Mikey.
I know. Not so dead inside today.
You guys primed my feelings all up earlier.
Oh, yeah. We pulled out some feelings in this episode.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a 6. Along the lines of what you guys were talking about. It brought up some things in my past that were just, I felt tense throughout this movie. It almost made me sick to my stomach a little bit.
Yeah, I was sweating at one point. Yeah.
And there really aren't that many scary big moments, but it's just this underlying current of like distrust and like you're unsafe, you know?
It's tension the whole time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's our scary scale.
All right. So this week you guys made me watch 10 Cloverfield Lane. What are you guys making me watch next week?
I am so excited.
Oh, are you?
Yes. Next week we are watching Deep Blue Sea.
Yes.
I can't.
This whole time, your hat has been just like a shark fin.
It has been, and you guys didn't even see it.
I have been quoting this movie for so long because of Chappelle's show that I'm sort of excited I get to see it.
Oh my God.
Although I'm sure I'll hate it because I hate water horror.
I classify this as a Mikey movie.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, I like it because it's got sharks in it, but I mean,
yes.
Yeah, we may be kicking off a month of aquatic themed horror with
Yeah.
our next
Oh,
episode.
yeah.
I
also.
100% am terrified of underwater horror.
Well, buckle up. The month of June is going to be aquatic horror month. And we don't do themes very often, but we kept wanting to watch all these shark movies. So and it's not just going to be sharks, but it just happened to, splash up on us.
All right,
Anyways.
guys. So watch Deep Blue Sea for next week. All right, Mikey. So do you have a review for us?
Nope, I definitely do not.
All right. Well, while Mikey is looking up a review, let me tell you how you can have Mikey read your review on the podcast. And that's simply by going to Apple iTunes and leaving us a 5-star text review. And if you want, leave us like an accent for him to read it in, throw some emoji in there, make it fun. Give us something to have a little fun with. And then Mikey will read it.
Yeah.
Usually like a batshit insane person.
I mean, yeah, that is on brand.
Mikey, do you have a review for us this week?
Here's a short review for you guys since this is going to be a long episode.
Okay.
Brandon B1117 says, amazing. I listen to you guys when I'm at work, and it makes work even better.
Aw.
Thank you guys for the great content. Keep it up.
Oh, thank
5
you.
stars.
Thank you so much, Brandon B117,
That's awesome.
for that awesome review. And if you guys want us to read your review, leave us a review. All right, guys, we are a member of the Consequence Podcast Network, which means you should check out all of their great podcasts like Halloweenies or The Losers Club or The Assembly or Kyle Meredith With or This Must Be the Gig or The Fifth Dimension.
Ghost Echoes, The Opus.
The Opus, yeah.
There are a lot, though. Check them out.
There are a lot. And if you want to check them out, they're all listed on their awesome website, Consequence of Sound, and a lot of great articles about both music and movies and pop culture stuff. Just check it out. It's amazing, guys. Check it out. And if you want to check out our shit, go to horrorvirgin.com. If you want to follow us on socials, go to @horrorvirgin on all the socials. If you want to follow us individually, Jen is at Jen with 2 N's for Ratu. Mikey is at MRandolph24, and I am at Todd J. Awesome. And if you want to help financially support the show, please do by going to patreon.com/horrorvirgin to sign up for one of our awesome levels where you get a lot of great things and a lot of great content. We do videos and just a lot of great bonus stuff. Yeah. And one of the things that we do monthly is a monthly listener request, which is where we came up with this episode.
That's
so
right.
if you want to get in on that, get in on the Patreon. But if you can't financially support the show, but you still want daily free content, check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/horrorvirgin. We also link it on social pretty often, so you can see the link to it there. And it's honestly daily free content with an awesome, almost 800 member community. So it's really, really growing. I know, I can't believe it. It's awesome. So thank you guys. And honestly, Facebook group members, thank you so much for being awesome.
Yes.
You guys are literally the best.
Thank you for joining us today, because that's going to be it for us.
Yeah.
I just finished working on my shower curtain suit, and so I'm about to try to smash through some windows and get the hell out of here.
Jen is serving us some post-APOC realness.
Well, on that note, I'm Jen.
I'm Mikey.
And I'm your horror virgin Todd, guys.
Have a great week.
Bye.
I just need that acid to clean some stuff in.
Badminton nerds.
Local man burns down house.
Solve the toilet paper crisis.
You still have to wipe. Even if you're dissolving your poops, you still have to wipe, you monster.
You just flick a little bit of acid right there on the.
No. Ugh.
This is why we're not quarantining with Mikey.
This and he gets re-exposed every 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Jen.
Consequence Podcast Network.